Let's take a look at how to assemble and set up your Harbor Freight Chicago Electric 10-inch 13-amp industrial table saw. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you have all the components to set it up. So I'm going to hold it here for a moment so you can pause it and check and make sure you have all the parts. Of course, you have your manual. Make sure you read, understand, and follow all the operational and safety instructions. This is your table fence. 2 wrenches to help you to change out the table saw blade. An additional nut for the table saw blade. You also have your miter gauge. And then you have a second table insert for dado blades, which is a stack of blades designed to make a wider cut. You also have the yellow handle that goes on the front for the crank. And then you have what I call your 3 finger savers. The first is the saw blade guard. The second is anti-kickback paw blades or paws. And then of course you have your push stick. These are what I call your 3 finger savers. Now what didn't come in the package is eye protection and ear protection. I strongly recommend before you operate your table saw that you run out and get a set. If not like this, identically something like it. So let's go ahead and get started setting up your table saw. Please note that everything I'm going to be doing in this video will be with the table saw unplugged, so do not plug in your table saw. On the left hand side is a little slot for you to store your miter gauge. And then on the right hand side there's convenient storage for your push stick. And then the next thing we want to notice, if you look down inside you can see some white styrofoam in there. We're going to take that out, so I'm going to turn this on its back so you can see it, and then we'll take it out. Your saw comes packed with 2 pieces of styrofoam to keep things in place while shipping. This first piece comes out fairly easily. This guy right here, you're going to need to turn the blade. So up here I've already installed the handle to this. You just need a Phillips head screwdriver. But this guy right here is wrapped around the motor to protect the motor during shipping. Well, there's no room to pull that out because it goes all the way around. So what you need to do is press down here and then turn in this direction. And you'll notice as I'm doing that, I'm still pressing down and turning. That's going to turn the blade to 45 degrees so that you can take this piece of styrofoam off. So I'm going to take this all the way around. You can hear that styrofoam flexing in there. So you see that? So this, let's see if I can get this off. Yeah. Okay. And now I've got to take this guy off. So you can see the assembly is now at 45 degrees. I'm going to crank it back and then we'll take a look inside the saw. Okay, let's take a look inside. Of course you have your motor. And then we have a 36 tooth carbide tip blade, 10-inch. Back here you can see a dust control port. I believe you could hook up a shop vac to that. And then you have what's called the riving knife. This is a very important safety feature. So this would be finger saver number 4. Okay. Now what I've done is I've set this on my Workmate 425 with the panels separated so that I can lower the riving knife from this position. So if you don't have this, use 2 sawhorses, extend it over the edge of a table and have someone help you to hold it. So to adjust the riving knife, you need to push this lever towards that red plate right there. That's your table insert. You want to push it in that direction. Mine was very stiff. I needed a wrench to push this down far enough. Okay? Once you've done that, then you need to take this and move this edge so it's flush here. There are 2 holes in here. There's this one and then there's the other one. Those 2 holes correspond with 2 posts that are in here, so they have to be lined up with the post. Otherwise, you can't clamp this down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that That's a two-handed operation, and I want to make sure that I get it right, and I don't want you to hear me cursing while I do it. It's a complex operation. The other thing I want you to do, remember, is these teeth are razor sharp, so be very careful. You might want to wear gloves while you do this operation. Okay, so now you can see the riving knife. The bottom of it's flush with these two panels, and then let's see if we can get in closer here. You can see how that's done. See how those pieces, and this is nice and flush. And then this lever is up towards you, away from this red table insert as far as you can take it. Okay? That's how you adjust the riving knife. I've turned the table right side up, so you can see the riving knife just barely peeking through at this point. That's why I had to turn it upside down so we could get it in this position. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this crank right here to crank it up and install the other two safety features, the kickback pause and the blade guard. So the next thing we want to do is install the anti-kickback pause, which are these guys right here. These are designed to keep your workpiece from flying back if there's any kickback from the blade. This is going to install right here on this hole on your riving knife. So how do we do that? You take this plunger and pull it back because it's spring loaded, and that pin is going to fit right in here. Okay? So I'm pulling it out. I'm setting it right there, and now it's in place. So what these guys do is they go up and down on your wood as it slides through. If something happens with kickback, then these are going to protect you from that. The next thing we want to do is install the blade guard, which is this guy right here. So what this is going to do is this is going to fit into this slot. So there's two fingers that fit down in here. So how do we make that fit? So you notice this lever, I'm going to lift it up. And what it does is it brings these two notches, I hope you can see that well, these two guys close together. When I close it down, they spread apart. So close, spread apart, close, spread apart. So I'm going to lift this up. I'm going to set this over the blade. See if I can get this right that first time. It's right there. And now I close it down, and it's firmly in place. So what we have are finger saver number 4, finger saver number 5, finger saver number 6 in place. Okay? Let's talk about the individual safety features one at a time. I've taken off the kickback pause and I've taken off the blade guard, and of course I have this unplugged because I want to get my fingers close to the blade. So this is your riving knife. What is it supposed to do? With some pieces of wood, as you push it through, they have a tendency, because of the grain, to squeeze on the other side. And I've had this happen to me as well. Before they had these, and boy does it kick back. So what will happen is, if it squeezes on the blade, then the blade will catch it and it'll kick this back from a blade that's spinning 5,000 RPM. You really don't want to do that. So the riving knife, if it has a tendency to squeeze back here, it'll squeeze on the riving knife, which is the same width as your blade, and prevent it from kicking back in your face as you pass it on through. Also, if for some reason you have a tendency to get a little bit out of square, it may just hit the riving knife before it hits the blade and prevent kickback as well. So that's one of your important finger savers. Your next safety feature are the anti-kickback pause. And the way they work is, as your workpiece comes through, these teeth grab it. So if for some reason it does tend to kick back, see, even there, I'm having a tough time pushing it right now. I have to lift this up to get it out from underneath it. So as you push through, it keeps this from kicking back. It'll only go so far. If it comes back, it'll go back this way. Or if it tries to go this way, it may cause the blade to bind, but I'd rather sacrifice a blade rather than my fingers. I also want to point out that if you're using a finer piece of wood or something that has a surface, this may leave marks on it. So how do you handle that? If I have a nicer piece of wood and I don't want this surface scratched, I'm going to attempt to cut with that surface down so the backside can get those tiny little mars of scratches. It's not a lot, but it's there. But you may want to make sure this finger saver is in place. That's called your anti-kickback pause. The next finger saver is your blade guard right here. So you notice the only thing that's exposed is this part of the blade in the back. So if for some reason your hand slips, you're not careful, you get distracted, you're less likely to get cut on the blade. And all that does is as you're feeding your work through, it just lifts up very carefully. I don't think this is going to mar your wood. This is not a lot of pressure holding this here. So if you're not concerned about the surface, or if you're concerned about the surface, this is not going to do it. And then it pushes back through here, and then your anti-kickback pause kick into place. So really you have three finger savers here. Your riving knife, your anti-kickback pause, and then you have your blade guard. These are three very important finger savers. Let's take a look at how to adjust the position of the blade. I've taken off the blade guard so you can see this better. First thing you want to do is make sure that this is loose, this little lock piece right here. So you want to turn that counterclockwise. That allows the blade to move back and forth. So if you want to change the blade to 45 degrees or anything in between, you push in on this, and you'll notice this is changing at the same time. I like to use my fingers like this rather than the handle, so it's a little bit more stable. So you can move it in any position that you want. So let's say you want it at 45. After you get it to 45, hold it in that position and then tighten this down. You can also change the depth of the cut by cranking the handle counterclockwise. Okay? And you see how the anti-kickback pause react? Okay? So let's take it back to 90 degrees. Lock it in place. And then you can see how this cranks down. And you notice these paws are catching on back here, but you can bring it down in a lower position. Okay? I also want to point out that anytime you're working, you only need about a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch of your blade above the wood. So you don't need a lot. The next thing you want to look at is your fence. You'll notice that you have a clear viewer right here with a red line that helps you to adjust to the distance between the fence and then the actual blade itself. Once you get it in the position that you want, all you have to do is lock it down. Okay? And that'll hold this into place. Now, one thing I want to point out about this one is you notice it's a little bit wobbly. So once you think you have a correct position, make sure it's parallel to either the miter gauge slot or to the blade, and that's very easy to measure with a simple ruler or with a piece of wood. You want to make sure this is parallel. Why? Again, I'm going to exaggerate this. If this is out of alignment, let me take this off. If this is out of alignment and your workpiece is coming in at an angle, what's it going to do? It's going to bind and then it's going to kick back. You don't want that. Okay? So you want to make sure that your fence is parallel every time you make a cut. It may take a little time, but you want to make sure even a fraction of an inch can cause binding back here. Hopefully a riving knife and your anti-kickback pause will prevent that. But you want to make sure this is always parallel to either a miter slot or to the blade itself. When you're using your fence, you want to use it to guide your piece through the blade, like so. Once you get up to about here on the table, you want to make sure that you use one of your finger savers, which is the push stick, and you want to push it all the way through until you've made your cut, okay? Until it comes out the back side. If it's a longer piece, you want to have someone on the other side to hold it for you, and or you want some kind of table back there to catch it. But you don't want your hands any closer than this to the blade, actual spinning blade itself. So always make sure you use your push sticks. Your miter gauge is another important accessory for your table saw. It is adjustable by this knob to 45 degrees either way. I'm just going to use it in a 90-degree position. And again, because I'm getting my hands close to the blade, I have this unplugged. So all you do is you hold this with your fingers like so. Notice the distance between my fingers and the blade, and then you pass it through the blade to cut. Don't be in a hurry. Let the tool do the work. Let the blade do the work as you're cutting. Whether you're doing a rip cut goes through like this, or a cross cut like you see here. Either way, let the blade, let the tool do the work as you go through. Well, that's about it for assembling your Harbor Freight Chicago Electric 10-inch table saw. Before we go, I want to remind you to get some eye protection and ear protection, as we talked about at the beginning. Also, always read, understand, and follow the operating instructions in your manual and safety instructions. So that's about it. If you found this video useful, please press like and share with your friends. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my channel. And as always, good luck on your projects.